Welcome, brave soul, to a realm where shadows whisper and secrets are buried deep. Tonight, I'll share with you two untold true stories that will send chills down your spine. But before we dive into the darkness, make sure to subscribe and join our growing circle of those who dare to explore the unknown. Are you ready to uncover what lies beyond the veil? Let's begin. Henry had never been one to buy into the stories. Just a marketing gimmick, he thought, designed to attract tourists who were eager to be tricked. That's what he told the curator during his job interview, straight to his face. The curator had given Henry a tour of the museum after hours one Friday evening and introduced him to Martha Carnwood. A local legend, her remains were discovered beneath the foundation of a cottage deep in Conhill Woods. Other remains had been found in similar areas, but Martha was the only one whose body hadn't decayed into mere bones. The rumors about her began almost immediately after she was put on display at the museum. Henry didn't buy it. People saw what they expected to see. If everyone thought she would blink, someone was bound to convince themselves it happened. The blurry photos circulating online, just tricks of light or poorly timed snapshots. Ghost hunters had fallen for less. The curator seemed pleased with Henry's skepticism. It showed he had a clear head and steady nerves, qualities Henry would need as the night guard. His first shift began the following Monday. That night, Henry didn't visit Martha much. Not because he was scared, he didn't believe the stories, but because it felt strange walking past a preserved corpse in the dark. On his tour, Martha had looked like a dried-out paper bag, stained and stuffed, her features poorly carved like a child's drawing. Her eyes, of course, were shut. Luckily, Martha was in a secluded hall at the far end of the museum. The only exit was a service door, locked after hours to prevent trespassers. Henry could walk past the corridor, glance down the hall, and pretend she wasn't even there. Around 3 a.m., as he made his rounds near Martha's hall, Henry thought he heard the service door click shut. He shined his flashlight down the corridor, but saw nothing. Still, something had made the noise. He walked down to the hall, passing Martha's glass case, and checked the door. It was still locked. Maybe someone was hiding, a thrill seeker hoping to catch a glimpse of Martha in action. Henry swept his flashlight across the hall, scanning for any sign of an intruder. The beam passed over Martha's display case, and his heart skipped. For a brief moment, he thought, no, it was just the glare from the flashlight. Henry wasn't superstitious. He didn't believe the stories. There weren't many places for someone to hide. Henry checked them all before deciding the noise must have been from the heating system shutting off. He was about to leave when his light fell on Martha again. Henry froze. He wanted to move his flashlight to look away, but it was as if Martha's eyes held him. Her eyes still shut, her lips twisted into that unnatural smile. It wasn't right. A statue might pull off stillness, but not this. Not with skin that looked so fragile, so lifeless, and a face that somehow seemed almost aware. Her fingers were outstretched, delicately curled in a way that reminded him of a doll's hands, yet they were brown, with nails jagged and yellowed. Henry tried to focus on her hands. If he could distract himself with those ruined nails, maybe he wouldn't look at her face, especially not that mouth, that empty smile, the nose collapsed inwards. Henry gasped, stumbling backward. No, it was nothing. He'd been staring at her fingers. He hadn't been looking properly at her face. It was just the light, just his imagination. Her eyes hadn't moved. They couldn't have. With effort, Henry turned and forced himself not to run. He walked briskly down the hall, keeping his gaze forward until Martha's passage was out of view. He didn't stop until he was in the wildlife exhibit, surrounded by stuffed birds, foxes, and mice. They were still, but nothing like her. These creatures didn't stare back with a twisted awareness. They didn't mock the fragility of life. Martha Carnwood, on the other hand, was something different. Too human, too imperfectly preserved, too wrong. Henry, you're being ridiculous, he thought. Martha was just a body, an empty body. She couldn't move, couldn't blink. He knew this. He was a sensible man, not one to buy into spooky legends. Yet as he turned back toward Martha's corridor, his skin prickled. Those eyelids, torn and fluttering, slowly opening to reveal black, endless voids. Stop it. Henry finished his patrol, carefully avoiding Martha's corridor as he made his way to the main lobby. The street outside was dark and empty. The world was asleep. Only he was awake, disturbing the silence of the night. He pushed on the front doors to check they were locked. They rattled, sending an echo that traveled through the empty museum, returning to him like footsteps from an unseen presence. He was glad Martha was trapped in her glass case, unable to get up. He paused, staring at his reflection in the glass. The dim glow of the lobby behind him, the shadows of exhibits lining the walls. It all seemed normal, until he saw the shadow gliding out of sight down a hall. "Who's there?" Henry called, but there was no answer. The silence pressed in. But someone's here, he thought. He rushed down the corridor where he thought he saw the shadow, passing displays of old farming tools and yellowed documents. He rounded a corner and came to a diorama of Carn Hill, the tiny, motionless figures frozen in time. A few more steps, and he found himself at a dead end, staring into a glass case. In her bed, as I left her. Henry turned away quickly, willing himself to ignore the thoughts creeping in from the edges of his mind. And imagination was all it was, of course. The figure he'd seen in the lobby doors? Just a trick of the mind. Maybe a bird flying outside, its shadow distorting the reflections, twisted by his nerves into the shape of a woman moving through the darkness. But even as Henry returned to the security office for coffee, he couldn't shake the feeling that footsteps were following him. It's just my own echo, he told himself. He passed the wildlife exhibit again, but the staring animals didn't provide their usual comfort. Their eyes seemed hollow, like endless pits, and he wished they'd just stay closed until morning. In the office, Henry filled his mug, trying to shake off the unease. I'm just tired, he thought. The coffee will fix me. He sipped, then poured a second cup. But as he drank, his thoughts wandered back to the curator's story. Why had the other bodies decayed, but not Martha? What had the archaeologists really uncovered in those woods? He could almost picture their shock as they unearthed Martha's still brown face. Had she blinked then? The thought gripped him. He could see it so clearly, her eyelids peeling back like brittle paper, revealing an abyss so deep it swallowed all light. He felt himself falling into it. Suddenly, a loud crash jolted him upright. His coffee mug had shattered on the floor. He stared at the pieces, then froze. Without thinking, he moved quickly to lock the office door. Leaning against it, he pressed his ear to the cool surface, listening. A faint shuffle, a scuffing step. Henry held his breath, feeling rooted to the spot, his body stiff with fear. Something brushed against the other side of the door, soft, papery, like a hand gliding over the surface. It moved toward the doorknob, then stopped. Henry's heartbeat thundered in his chest. Cold sweat dripped down his face. A click echoed from the other side, followed by a scraping sound, then a single tap, just inches from where Henry's ear was pressed against the door. His body lurched and he collapsed back into the chair. His eyes widened, straining, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The tapping grew louder, now turning into frantic scratching, before abruptly stopping. Henry sat frozen, the silence overwhelming. It pressed down on him like a physical weight. The entire museum felt hollow, empty. It was just him. Only him. Yet those sounds, they couldn't have come from nowhere. For what felt like an eternity, Henry remained motionless, his pulse thundering in his ears. Finally, a thought broke through the fear. I need to check. He had a job to do, after all. An intruder, one with a knack for hiding, had to be playing games. Henry wouldn't fall for it. He forced himself to stand, trembling, and moved toward the door. His hands fumbled with the lock, and when he cracked the door open, he peered cautiously into the hallway. The police arrived at the museum early Tuesday morning. They found no signs of a break-in, and all the exhibits were intact. The only oddities were a shattered coffee mug in the security office and a pile of bones in a dead-end corridor, next to the display of Martha Carnwood, who still smiled her unblinking, eerie smile. Come on, guys. Seriously. If you keep fooling around, we're going to miss the bus, and I can't afford to be late today. My voice wavers, lacking the authority it needs in the moment. Stewie and Colin are still on the floor, wrestling like they always do. In all the chaos, I realize Stewie is still barefoot. Stewie, where are your shoes? My panic rises, and I can feel my frustration spilling over. Probably left them at Brad's place, Colin mutters, not missing a beat. Who's Brad, and why does he have your shoes? I ask, turning to Stewie with a mix of concern and disbelief. Stewie looks up at me warily, his eyes wide. Brad is Mom's new friend, but I didn't leave my shoes there. I swear. My heart sinks. Brad. That's the third friend my wife's had this year alone, and we're not even through March yet. It makes my stomach churn. Just then, Colin runs up with Stewie's shoes, holding them like something I'd expect to find in a trash bin. The soles are barely hanging on, the shoes looking like they've lived a hard life. Hey, didn't your mom buy you new shoes? I gave her money last week for your school clothes, I say, staring at the sad, battered shoes in my hands. Colin shrugs nonchalantly. Mom bought us candy last weekend. Then she dropped us off at Grandma and Grandpa's so she and Brad could go to Bike Week. He sounds almost bored by it, as if it's just another day. Still kneeling down to help Stewie, I can hear him grumbling. Daddy, I can do it myself. All the other kids tie their shoes without help. A heavy sigh escapes me before I can answer. Not today, buddy. I'm sorry, I know you're a big boy, but we're really running behind. Stewie, looking proud and ready, steps outside with his bus safety harness on. He puffs out his chest, ready to take on the day, the Stewie gray way. Unfortunately, the kids' bus is already pulling around the corner, its red lights disappearing into the distance. Colin, still standing on the porch, is too far away to be seen by the driver. Sorry, Dad, he says, head hung low. It's not your fault, Colin. It's okay. Grab the change jar off the counter while I call work to let them know I'll be late. I dial the number, only to be met with an automated message. We're sorry. Your account has been suspended due to non-payment. Please call 611 to make a payment. Goodbye. I take a deep breath, ready to snap, but Stewie hands me the change jar before I can say anything. I light a cigarette, trying to calm my nerves as we climb into the car, rolling the windows down in a half-hearted attempt at relief. The water bottle in the passenger cup holder hisses as I drop the cigarette butt inside. Colin and Stewie laugh as we roll over the speed bumps at the school entrance. A serious-looking crossing guard waves us forward without hesitation. We barely stop before she opens the door. Have a good day, boys. That's all I hear before the car behind me honks, and the crossing guard slams the door shut. About 5 miles down the road, the low fuel light blinks on, reflecting an angry orange glow in my glasses. The gas gauge taunts me as I hope to make it to the next intersection. I feel a small sense of relief when I spot a Circle K in the distance. Maybe today won't be a total disaster. The light turns yellow. I swear it's out to get me. There's only one other car on the road, and it's right next to me. I ease off the gas and press the brake pedal, watching my hopes of being on time fade with the car's deceleration. I come to a complete stop. I can't help but glance at the car next to me. It's a spotless red, gleaming in the daylight, with not a dent or scratch in sight. A couple, probably about my age, sits in the front seat. The woman, with flowing red hair, rests her hand on the driver's neck as they share quiet laughs. Their clothes are effortlessly stylish, and the latest iPhone sits neatly in the cup holder. It's perfect in a way that makes my stomach churn. Thoughts creep in before I can stop them. Their tank's probably full, must be nice. They probably eat real meals from a stocked fridge and sleep soundly together at night. No loneliness, no frustration. They probably never have to pretend everything is okay when it's not. Never rub one out of pure desperation. I wonder what it would be like to have that kind of life. The light turns green and I try to focus, turn the radio down, and speed up to switch into the right lane. Just as I pass their car, a blaring horn and the sickening sound of metal crunching fill the air. The red car slams into the back corner of mine, spinning me out of control. I see an oak tree coming fast. The last thing I remember is the dashboard slamming into my head. I wake with a splitting headache, the ringing in my ears only amplifying the pain. The red-haired woman's mouth moves furiously, but her words are muffled. Shattered glass is everywhere, and then a sharp pain shoots through my left temple as my hearing clears.
"Henry!" she screams. "We need to get thee out of here now! The cops will be here any second!"
What? My name's Todd, not Henry. I glance toward the cracked window and see a man staring back at me. It's not my face. A chiseled jaw, green eyes wide with panic. Those aren't mine. I turn to look at the dashboard and freeze. There's a red hood, crumpled and battered. My Grand Marquis is in the distance, smashed into a tree, just like the other car. What the hell is going on? A man, identical to the one I've been for 39 years, slumps over my steering wheel, blood streaming from a deep wound on the left side of his head. How hard did I hit myself? Nothing makes sense. The rear-view mirror dangles above us, broken glass spilling into the car from the cracks. But what really throws me off is that I'm not injured. My face and head are untouched, even though my arms and fingers are cut. Why does my head hurt so much? I turn my attention to the woman beside me, desperate for answers. "Who are you?" I ask, confused. Her eyes widen with alarm and she doesn't answer, instead placing a trembling, manicured hand to my forehead. "You okay, Henry?" "Oh no, don't do this now, baby," she murmurs, hurriedly opening my door and pushing me into the passenger seat, making me wince from the pain at my temple. The engine hums to life, and through the windshield, I see the other version of me slowly raise his bloodied head from the wheel. "But that's my car," I say, barely above a whisper. "Yeah, it's fucked," she grumbles, slamming the gas pedal down. "We're gonna stand out like a sore thumb. Damn it. Looks like we'll have to steal another one, 3 towns over." Her words sink in slowly and I can't help but ask, "What do you mean, steal? Why are you taking me from my car? My head's bleeding. You need to call for help." My voice cracks with desperation. She glances at me, puzzled. "Your head's fine, Hank. You bumped it when we hit the junker. You're just having trouble remembering. It'll come back." She places her hand gently over mine, and I fight the urge to pull away. I don't like being touched, especially by strangers. The banging from the back of the vehicle cuts through my thoughts like a knife. The woman curses under her breath. "Oh, hell. I knew she was gonna wake up." "Who?" What is that noise? Do we have a flat? I ask, panic creeping in. She shakes her head, muttering something I can't make out. Boy, you really are fucked, aren't you? She scoffs. That's our latest mark. Things got messy, and we had to deal with it like the last one. If she gets blood on the mat in there, I'm gonna be pissed. She looks at me, noticing the shock on my face. Don't worry, though. You like it every time, I promise. I try to process the words, but it doesn't make sense. I've somehow switched places with the man I envied in the other car, a body that clearly carries a dark, sadistic history. And if I'm in his body, a new thought creeps in, darker than anything I've encountered before. Oh my God,